it meant to me, how much it moved me. I even mentioned that I had made a girlfriend there. So we got to talking about that, and I told him that I had her picture. I was carrying the girl's picture in my wallet. So Swamiji asked to see. I took out the picture, and Swamiji looked at it and made a some sour face and said, "Oh, she is not pretty girl. In India are more beautiful than that." Hearing that from the Swamiji just killed any attachment I had for that girl. I felt ashamed that I had an interest in a girl that the Swami did not consider pretty. I don't think I ever looked at the photograph again, and certainly I never gave her another thought. Hari Bol. Bruce was a newcomer and had only been to 1 week of meeting at the storefront. So no one had told him that the member of the Ananda Ashram, Dr. Mishra's yoga retreat, had invited Swamiji and his followers for a day in the upstate countryside. Bruce has just arrived at the storefront one morning when we heard someone announce the Swami is leaving. And Prabhupada came out of the building and stepped into a car. In fit of anxiety, Bruce thought that the Swami was leaving them for good, for India. No, Howard told him, we are going to a yoga ashram in the country. But the other car had already left, and there was no room in Swamiji's car. Just then, Steve showed up, and he had expected the boys to come by his apartment to pick him up. They both had missed the ride. So Bruce found a friend up in the Bronx and convinced him to drive them up to Ananda Ashram. But when they got to Bruce's friend's apartment, the friend had decided he didn't want to go. Finally, he lent Bruce his car, and Swami's two new followers set out for Ananda Ashram. By the time they arrived, Prabhupada and his group were already taking prasadam. They missed the whole thing. Sitting around a picnic table beneath the trees. Ananda Ashram was a beautiful place with sloping hills and lots of trees and sky and green grass and a lake. The two latecomers came walking up to the Swamiji, who was seated like the father of a family at the head of the picnic table. Keith was serving from a big wok onto the individual plates. When Prabhupada saw his two stranglers, he asked them to sit next to him, and Keith served them. Prabhupada took Steve's chapati and heaped it up with a mound of sugar, and Steve munched on the bread and sugar while everyone laughed. Prabhupada began talking somehow about lion tamers. And he recalled that once at a fair, he had seen a man wrestling with a tiger, rolling over and over with it down a hill. The boys, who rarely heard Swamiji speak anything but philosophy, were surprised. They were delighted city kids taken to the country by the Guru and having a good time. So Steve is explaining in his own words. I was walking with Swamiji across a long, gentle slope. I wanted him to see and approve a picture of Radha and Krishna. I had found in a small book, Narada Bhakti Sutra. I had planned to get a color reproduction of it to give to each of his followers. So as we were walking across the grass, I showed him the picture and asked him whether it was a nice picture of Radha and Krishna for reproducing. He looked at the picture, smiled, nodded, and said yes. So Bruce is now telling, I walked with Swamiji around the grounds. All the others were doing something else. And Swamiji and myself were walking alone. He was talking about building a temple there. Prabhupada walked across the scenic acreage, looking at the distant mountains and forest. And Keith walked beside him. Prabhupada spoke of how Dr. Mishra had offered him the island in the middle of the ashram's lake to build a temple on. Quote, what kind of temple were you thinking of? Unquote, Keith asked. Quote, how big? Unquote. Prabhupada smiled and gestured across the horizon. As big as the whole horizon. Keith laughed. Yes, Prabhupada replied. A few Anand Ashram men and women came by. One woman was wearing a sari. Prabhupada turned to the other woman and said, a woman who wears a sari looks very feminine. It was late afternoon when some of Swamiji followers gathered by the lake and began talking candidly about Swamiji and speculating about his relations to God and their relations to him. Quote, well, said Wali, Swami never claimed to be a god or an incarnation, but he says that he is a servant of God, teaching love of God. But he says that the spiritual master is non-different from God, said Howard. They stood at the edge of the mirrory calm lake and concluded that it was not necessary to talk about this. The answer would be revealed later. None of them really had much spiritual knowledge, but they wanted their faith to deepen. Afterward, Keith, Wale, and Howard wandered into the meditation room. There was a seat with a picture of Dr. Mishra, who was away in Europe. But the most remarkable thing was a blinking strobe light. It says, quote, I feel like I'm in a head soap on St. Mark's Place, unquote, said Wale. Quote, what kind of spiritual meditation is this, unquote, Howard asked. A Mishra follower wearing a white kurta and white bell-bottoms replied that their guru had said they could sit and meditate on this light. Quote, Swamiji says you should meditate on Krishna, said Keith. After sunset, everyone gathered in the large room of the main building to watch a slideshow. It was a loose collection, mostly of assorted slides of India and the Anand Ashram. A record by a popular Indian sitarist was playing in the background. Some of the slides were of Vishnu temples, and when one slide passed by quickly, Prabhupada asked, quote, "Let me see that. Can you go back and let me see that temple again?" This happened several times when he recognized familiar temples in India. Later in the show, there were several slides of a girl, one of the members of Dr. Mishra's ashram, demonstrating Indian dance poses. As one of her pictures passed, an ashram man joked, quote, "Turn back and let me see that temple again," unquote. The joke seemed at Swamiji's expense and in poor taste. His follower didn't laugh even. Then came Swamiji's lecture. He sat up cross-legged on the couch in the largest room in the mansion. The room was filled with people, and Swami's follower from the Lower East Side, as well as Anand Ashram yogis, sitting on the floor or standing along the walls and in the doorway. Prabhupada began his talk by criticizing democracy. He said that because people are attached to sense gratification, they vote for a leader who will fulfill their own lust and greed. And that is their only criterion for picking a leader. He went on for 45 minutes to explain about the importance of Krishna consciousness. His reel-to-reel tape recorder moving silently. Then he led a kirtan that bridged all differences and brought out the best in everyone that night. Several nights before, in his apartment on 2nd Avenue, Prabhupada had taught his follower how to dance. They had formed a line behind him while he demonstrated the simple step. Holding his arms above his head, he would first swing his left foot forward across the right foot, and then bringing it back again in a sweeping motion. Then he would swing the right foot over the left and bring it back again with this arm upraised. Prabhupada would walk forward, swinging his body from side to side, left foot to the right side, right foot to the left side, in time with the 1, 2, 3 rhythm. He had shown them the step in regular time and in a slow half-time rhythm. Keith had called it Swami step, as if it were a new ballroom dance. Prabhupada's followers began dancing, and soon the others joined them, moving around the room in a rhythmic circle of ecstasy, dancing, swaying, sometimes leaping and whirling. It was a joyous hour-long kirtan, the Swami encouraging everyone to the fullest extent. A visitor to the ashram happened to have his stringal bass with him, and he began expertly turning out his own swinging bass improvisations beneath the Swami's melody, while another man played the tablas. The Anand Ashram members had been divided off late into 2 tents. Standoffish groups. There was the elderly crowd, similar to the old ladies who had attended the Swami's uptown lectures. And there was the young crowd, mostly hip couples. But in the kirtan, their rifts were forgotten, and as they discovered later, even held. Whether they liked it or not, almost all those present were induced to rise and dance. Then it was late. The Swami took rest in the guest room, and his boys slept outside in their sleeping bag. So Howard is explaining in his own word as follows. I awaken 3 or 4 times, and each time I'm flat on my back, looking up at the stars, which are always in different positions. I remember my childhood in my village. We used to sleep outside, and we can see, I still remember the Saptasirusi, the four like in a rectangular shape, and 3 more stars goes on the bottom. And looking at the position of this Saptarushi, we can tell even the time, at least in 15 minutes interval, like we can guess very close. But now we have no time. Who has seen the star lately? Tell me. We were going to California, and I think there is a one famous road. I don't remember exactly. But there is no town all around the road in 25-mile radius. So there is no light. City light is the one stopping us to enjoy this galaxy. So we stop our car, and you won't believe how many stars were sprinkling in the sky, each close to each other, thousands and thousands of stars that I never seen even in India. So only hardly we see, in Houston skyline, maybe few stars here and there, but actually there are so many stars. The whole sky was full of stars, and I was so amazed. So over here it says that looking up at the stars, which are always in different position, my sense of time is confused. The sidereal shift dizzy me. Then just before morning, I dream. I dream of devotees clustered about a beautiful golden youth. To see him is to be captivated. His transcendental body radiates an absolute beauty unseen in the world. Stunned. And how lucky, how it is to see that, right? I imagine, what is there? Don't you know? Someone says, that's the Swami. I look carefully, but see no resemblance. The youth appear around 18, straight out of Vaikuntha, the spiritual world. If that's Swamiji, I wonder to myself, why don't he come to earth like that? A voice somewhere inside me answers, people would follow me for my beauty, not for my teachings. And I awake, startled. The dream is clear in my mind, more like a vision than a dream. I feel strangely refreshed, bathed in some unknown balm. Again, I see that the constellations have shifted and that the dimmer stars have faded into the encroaching dawn. I remember Swamiji telling me that although most dreams are simply functions of the mind, dreams of the spiritual master are of spiritual significance. Haribol. Keith also had a dream that night. Oh, that must be a dream night for everyone. So Keith is explaining his dream. I saw Krishna and Arjuna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. And Arjuna was inquiring for Krishna, and Krishna was reciting the Bhagavad Gita to him. Then that picture faced out, and the images changed, and there was Swamiji, and I was kneeling in front of him, and the same dialogue was going on. I had the understanding that now is the time, and Swamiji is presenting the same thing as Krishna. And we are all in the position of Arjuna. The dream made it very clear that hearing from Swamiji was as good as hearing from Krishna. Hari Bol. The sun rose over the mountains, streaking the morning sky above the lake with colors. Wali and Kit were walking around the ground, saying to Prabhupada how beautiful it all was. Quote, we are not so concerned with beautiful scenery, unquote, said Srila Prabhupada. Quote, we are concerned with the beautiful one who has made the beautiful scenery, unquote. Always credit goes to Krishna. Later, Prabhupada sat next to Bruce in the Volkswagen returning to the city. The car went winding around on a ribbon of smooth black mountain road, with lush green forests close in and intermittent vistas of mountain and expansive sky. It was a rare occasion for Bruce to be driving Prabhupada in a car, because none of the Swamiji's boys had cars. They would always travel by bus or subway. It seems fitting for the Swami to have a car to ride in, but this was only a little Volkswagen. And Bruce winced whenever they hit a bump, and it jostled Prabhupada. As they wound their way on through the mountain, Bruce recalled something he had read in a book by Aldous Huxley's wife about the best place for meditation. One opinion had been that the best place to meditate was by a large body of water because of the negative ions in the air. And the other opinion was that it was better to meditate in the mountains because you are higher up and closer to God. Quote, is it better for spiritual realizations to meditate in the mountains? Unquote, Bruce asked Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada replied, quote, this is nonsense. There is no question of better place. Are you thinking that God is up on some planet or something and you have to go up high? No, you can meditate anywhere. Just chant Hare Krishna, Hare Bol. After some time, the drive became tiring for Prabhupada, and he dozed, his head resting forward. Bruce walked with Swamiji up to his apartment, opening the door for him, adjusting the window as he liked it, and preparing things in his room as if he were the Swami's personal servant. Prabhupada settled back into his Second Avenue apartment, feeling pleased with the visit to Anand Ashram. The kirtan had been successful, and one of Dr. Mishra's former students had commented that he was impressed by Prabhupada followers. Simply by chanting, they seems to be achieving an advanced level of yoga disciplines, whereas, quote, we have more difficulty with all our postures and breath control, unquote. The United States recently increased involvement in Vietnam was creating an increase of oppositions to the war. On July 29, American planes had bombed North Vietnam's two major population centers, Hanoi and Haiphong, an escalation which brought expressions of regret from several allied countries, including Canada, France, and Japan. United Nations Secretary General U Thant openly criticized America's policy in Vietnam. Further oppositions to the war raged from the US Senate down to newly formed pacifist groups, and dissenters held peace marches, sit-ins, and rallies in protest of the war and draft. A religious protest was led by Pope Paul VI, and the World Council of Churches decried America's involvement in Vietnam and called for a halt in the fighting as, quote, the most effective step, unquote, toward negotiation. On August 6, the anniversary of the bombing of Hiroshima, there were demonstrations in many major American cities, including a peace vigil at the United Nations headquarters in New York. On August 31st, there would be another 2-week-long peace vigil before the United Nations General Assembly building. And Mr. Larry Bogart had invited Prabhupada and his followers to open the vigil of praying for peace. Larry Bogart, who worked at the United Nations headquarters, had become friends with the Swami and had volunteered his help by arranging to print stationery for the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. The letterhead was designed by James Green with a sketch of Radha and Krishna. And Mr. Bogart's name also appeared on the stationery at the head of the list of ISKCON trustees. Prabhupada accepted Mr. Bogart's invitation to the peace vigil. Prabhupada saw it an opportunity to publicly chant Hare Krishna, so he was glad to attend. He announced to his congregation that Monday, the 31st, instead of the usual morning class at 6:30, everyone should meet at the United Nations headquarters for a special kirtan. So August 31st, the day came. Some met at the storefront and went by bus, carrying kartals, tambourine, and the Swami's bongo. Swamiji rode with a few of his followers in a taxi. The typical dress of his follower consisted of well-known sneakers, black pants or blue jeans, and t-shirt or button-down sports shirts. Traveling uptown in the early morning put the boys in a light-hearted spirit. And when they saw Swamiji at the UN, in his flowing saffron robes, they become inspired. Haribo. Swamiji began the chanting, but right away, the peace vigil organizers stepped in and asked him to stop. This was silent vigil, they said, and it should have prayerful, non-violent silence. The boys were crushed. But Swamiji accepted the restriction and began silently chanting on his beads. Time is 6:55. We should be punctual in our practice. So we'll stop here. And before the devotees leave, we would like to offer our humble obeisances to their feet. Yesterday, when we spent 2 hours with Bruhat Madanga Prabhu and Bhakta Stephen, and I asked them, it's so kind of you that you came. And Bruhat Madanga Prabhu says, no, my spiritual master instructed me that you must spend some time with Shyam Sundar when you go to Houston. So we are following the order of my Guru. And we enjoy so much that I can recall that we offer our humble obeisances in 2 hours, minimum 7 to 8 times. When we were saying something, they bow down and I bow down, and it was wonderful. Spending the time with the devotees in an intimate way, revealing our mind and heart. And that discussion was so profound about maintaining brahmacharya, even in Grihastha ashram. And I was keep on asking them, what do you do? Because this is so difficult. I remember when the Gaudiya Math were fighting, I think Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Maharaj started saying, I will accept to worship my Guru Maharaj or some occasion, I don't know what it was, detail I don't remember. But he said, the person who can perform, who has maintained the brahmacharya for 6 months, come forward. Nobody came forward. Then Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Maharaj says, okay, anybody has maintained brahmacharya for 3 months, come forward. Nobody came. Then Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Maharaj says, if you have maintained complete brahmacharya for 1 month, these are all saintly person, followers of Bhakti, Gaur Kishore Das Babaji's. Nobody came forward. And Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Maharaj says, if somebody has maintained for 1 week, come forward. Nobody dare to come forward in presence. It's very difficult, but if somehow or other by the grace of Guru and Krishna, if he maintain that, it's so sublime. Radha and Krishna will become delightful, saying our austerities. So this is something that we discuss most of the time, and we were citing example of our example. And it's so nice to see that I was praising them, and even I told them that sometime I cry that you guys give up your household life and join. And I'm always worried that when you become old and when you will need the help, is that International Society of Krishna Consciousness will provide you good care. My concern is there. If somebody has dedicated the whole life, and if he cannot take care of them, it would be really detrimental to our movement. We should appreciate the sacrifice the devotees has performed. We should never forget that. And it was very, very nice. So this is what we should